When you have to shoot, shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone. Welcome to the Trap House Podcast. My name's Justin Jett. Episode 31. We finally got Dave Hastings on, the president of Fur Takers of America. He's been a busy guy, so we tracked him down. We're going to talk about some issues trappers are currently facing, ways to join, ways to help out, a bunch of different stuff. So stick tight with that. We're also got to give it up to the Hags bracket maker, Jeff Haggerty and Jessica. Just want to say thank you guys for being the sponsor of the show and keeping us alive. Their website is j3o.com. That's J3 Outdoors, maker of the Hags bracket, the spring clip. They got several awesome American-made products. Check out their website. Also, Top Lot Stretcher Company. Their website is toplotstretcherco.com. They have an awesome adjustable stretcher. I know there's guys that are still waiting around. It's kind of the last minute and pitting fur up. Their stuff is a really nice product to help you get that done, get the job, get a real nice put-up finish before you sell it. So check them out. Also, this wouldn't be possible without Hoosier Trapper Supply. We got an awesome new website. It's www.hoosiertrappersupply.com, home of the top dog predator bait and jet fuel. Check out all those goodies at our website. Of course, follow us on social media. Be sure to watch our Hoosier Trapper Outdoors on YouTube and join the Catch Circle page on Facebook. And last but not least, please join a trapping organization of some sort, either state level, national level. Doesn't matter. We need all the numbers count. So please join. All right, let's talk to Dave. All right, we're here with Dave Hastings, the president of Fur Takers of America. We finally got him on the show. Wrestled him down. Dave, you mind kind of giving us a background of your upbringing and how you got involved with trapping and that sort of thing?
Sure. Hi, guys. I grew up with a family. My dad was an ambulance driver, and he was a hunter and a fisherman his whole life. But during my formative years, he was on call a lot, and so wasn't much of a mentor and didn't know a trapper. Found some number one Long Springs in the garage and read a couple of books and decided that's who I needed to be. Fur Fish Game magazine was big. I figured out where the muskrats were, and I caught one, and I thought I was a genius. And then I saw an ad in Fur Fishing Game in the late 50s or early 60s that had a conibear, funny looking little trap, and I ordered a 110 conibear. Saw a mink go into a hole in the bank and put the conibear over the hole and caught my first mink, and I was the hero of the school. It was a $28 mink. This is 1960, and I was a sixth grader, so ruined me. I haven't been fixed since, and fit trapping in with other stuff. As a younger man, I tried, I did a lot of archery, and I did some fly fishing, and we hunted ducks and geese and grouse. And it just kind of did everything. But as my life progressed, most of all that other stuff has fallen to the wayside, and it's just been trapping, much to my wife's dismay. But that's kind of how it works. It's sort of a family squabble. But and that's pretty much been it. Most of what I figured out by looking at old timer sets that I found. I could see where they were trapping. I knew a family that trapped, and I'd sit there and study them like I was working on history class, because I wanted to know what they did, and I learned a lot from them. Got to know them well when I grew up, and I even have some of the old guys' traps now in my collection, so I'm proud to do that. But yeah, that's how it all got started. Didn't get involved in the associations until the 70s, and then I guess that was the beginning of the end of private life.
Yeah. Now, you grew up and still are in Nebraska, right?
Yes. I grew up in a little town called Ord. If you put an X over Nebraska, it's where the center of the X is. North of me was good sandhill country. South of me is muddy creek country, coon. So we had good coyotes and good coons all around, and plenty of that. I got real serious about predator calling for a long time, and that sort of helped me get through some of my busier times with high school sports and things when I really didn't find time to trap. When Saturday came around, I could go call. and I wouldn't have to check traps every day, that sort of thing. But yeah, that's where I grew up, and then started to travel. I've called in, I don't know, I can't even, 15, 17 different states, and Alaska, Canada, and trapped in quite a few places, and hunted in a few more, and traveled about 1 million more for conventions and rendezvous. So pretty well whisked me away.
So when did you get involved in fur takers?
There was Chuck Spearman had some kind of a rendezvous down there. It wasn't a fur taker rendezvous, but it was where the Trapper magazine was being published in Sutton, Nebraska.
Right.
And I went to it, and there was a pile of newspapers on the table, and another newspaper. Then I realized it was a fur taker, and I picked one up, and there was an article in there about beaver trapping by Calvin Cobb. And I was wrestling with a beaver issue at that time, and what he said just lit the fire in my head. And I sent my check off, and I joined then. I don't even know what year it was, somewhere in the 70s, somewhere there. And I really didn't get too engaged with it too much, except I really like to read those writers that really put good data into their articles. Man, that helped me a lot. And I studied those pretty hard. Sometimes tried that stuff out and it didn't work for me. Sometimes it lit a fire, and I made a lot of progress that way.
Mm-hmm. So then as things progressed with fur takers, obviously you were on the board. Well, you were the editor, right? That was the editor of the Fur Taker magazine. Right. That was first, right?
When my son was in elementary school, and my daughter was just a baby, scratching to make ends meet, there was an article, and Bernie Behringer put a thing in there that said we need somebody to sell ads for the magazine. And the idea of selling ads to me was right up there with, working in the sewers with the guy on Honeymooners. But it was something I could do on Saturday nights and Sunday mornings and Wednesday afternoons, and fit it in around the rest of my life. And so I started doing ad sales for the Fur Taker. It's something I never thought I would ever do, because the salesman metaphor,
mm-hmm.
And got fairly successful with it, got along well with Bernie, and did some writing for Bernie. I published a few articles. I got some stuff in Fur Fishing Game, some other articles. But when I got with Bernie and the Fur Takers, he ran several of my articles, encouraged me to write more. And then after Bernie's term kind of expired, Chick said, the president at the time said, "Dave, will you be our editor?" And I said, "Sure." I said, "How do you do it?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Okay, I'll go figure it out." And so that's what I did. The first few issues were an absolute nightmare in my lifetime. I'll tell you, my family paid the price. But what managed to do then for the next 20 or 25 years was to be able to manage several magazines and fit them in around my life. And what a blessing that has been. I've met more wonderful people and traveled more and talked to more people and gotten more input from more people than, it was just like one of those watershed moments in your life where your direction just shifts entirely. And it's just been a gift. I got to meet some of the people that I saw as, we think of Willie Mays and Babe Ruth and people like that in the trapping world. I knew about half of them now because of those stops. And that's a blessing. I count my blessings on that every day, and more to meet today. You never know who you're talking to at a convention. Sometimes they're kind of quiet and modest, and you find out they're killing 700 coyotes a year, and just it takes a while to get used to the fact that people don't wear a badge that says who they are. In our community, you get out and you earn it. And it's a great opportunity to meet some wonderful people.
So you were the editor for 20 plus years.
Something like that.
Yeah. And always look forward to reading what you wrote, both as an editor and as writing articles. And then you got the tap to be president, or you were to consider being president.
Yeah.
It was better than that. It was like, "Come on, Dave, you can do it."
And I said, "How do I do that?" And they said, "I don't know." And I said, "Okay, I'll do it." It seems like the story of my life. And I still don't know. Every day is a new adventure. I'm not kidding. But as I was watching the past president do his thing, you know how it is when it's not you see this isn't done, or you didn't get that done the way you like it. now that I'm in those shoes, I'm a little bit quieter about that sort of thing, because I realize this, a lot of the stuff that Chick Andrews did, people never noted or didn't take notice of and didn't give him credit for. He was just a wonderful influence, and he still is. I lean on him all the time right now for advice and help. And I think when I get ready to pass the baton, and some days that could be noon or it might be supper time, I don't know. I'll be happy to help whoever's going. What I have from my shortcomings, and I think Chick would admit he did too, is that social media has skyrocketed us ahead so quickly that you don't catch up when you're 70. You catch up when you're way younger. So that's probably my biggest downfall. But we're trying to get it all done, and we're growing. We did some interviews recently, and several people asked me, what do you see as the vision for the future of the fur takers? And I'm telling you, I'm doing cartwheels. I feel like we are poised like we have never been in my history to make a difference as an association.
Mm-hmm.
We have people in place in good positions who are bright and ambitious and thoughtful. We have working relationships with a huge coalition of other people. I just feel like we're on the verge of something really, really big. And I'm so proud to be around while it happened. And pretty soon I'll take my seat in the bleachers and cheer everybody else on. But right now it's trying to juggle those balls and get moving forward into the 22nd century. So
we compliment you on the excellent job that you've been doing as president. I'm trying to, I don't want to put anyone else down in order to say that, but you have been doing a great job as president. So I sure appreciate that. I hope other trappers have noticed or realized what you've done. And I know that I don't fully realize how much time you're spending with it. Because I know that your life probably revolves around being fur taker president. And it's basically a full-time job.
It pretty much is. And God bless my wife. And one of the beautiful things about it is I'm retired now. I don't have that 9 to 5 that I've got to take care of. And so and honestly, I don't sit very well. So if I wasn't doing this, I'd probably have to go find a day job, but by the same token, it does take a lot of time, and things don't happen. They don't happen at noon. They happen at 6 in the morning and 11 o'clock at night, and things need to be done, and people are upset, or they're worried, or they're needing help, or maybe even just somebody wants to know how to get something done, or how do I get a membership, or what happened to my magazine. Those kind of things are part of it, but it is a busy task, and most of the busy part of it doesn't stress me out much. The hard part is planning for the future so that we grow to be more than we've ever been, and also to look at the politics and make sure that we have a future. Yeah. And those two things, I have to be careful. When it's about bedtime, I don't dare let my head go to one of those two topics, or I got to get up and go to work. I can't even go to sleep anymore. So I got to be careful about when I think about that stuff. But I got to tell you, I'm pretty pumped, but it is a demanding thing. And I appreciate your comment. I've had several people say nice things and encouragement. But you also do stupid things, and you screw up and make your mistakes, and you hear about those too. And people so far have been pretty gracious about it. But I'm at that point in my life where I'm going to do the best job I know how, and if it's wrong, it's wrong. And thank you very much. So.
Well, I might add that they're not going to, no one's going to dock your pay.
Well, there's that. If they could cut my pay in half, they might try it. Yeah, we'll see how to do that.
So for those of you that don't know, that are listening to this, this is a volunteer position. So Dave's devotion to this means even more if you think about it, because this is totally a volunteer effort on his part. So we more than appreciate that. So Dave, it's early enough in the day you're not going to bed here, I don't think, in the near future of this day. So let's talk about issues facing trappers right now. There's 2 or 3 that are pretty serious. Well, I'll let you talk about it. You can.
Okay. There are currently 13 hot states right now that have bills pending that would be very harmful to trapping. And they range a broad array. Illinois has got a bill right now to stop people from hunting and trapping bobcats. And as far as I can tell, the rationale is they're pretty. That's about it. for me personally, some of the states, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Oregon, they have such, and Colorado, they have such a great team in place who have been fighting for trapping for decades. And they survive well on their own because they know how. And we help them, and we're ready to go. We've been submitting testimony, we submit letters, we make calls, we get on the conference calls and help plan the strategy. But those guys I don't worry too much about because they know they're senators, they've got a busy lobbyist. The ones I worry about are places like Nebraska, who have never had a challenge. I don't know that Indiana has had a real challenge that I'm aware of.
We haven't had a challenge since back in the 1970s. It was pretty hardcore back then. Early 80s. I remember going down to the State House more than once, several times actually. So, but since then, we really haven't had a challenge. So, fortunately, knock on wood.
Well, and it kind of builds a complacency in your structure. You worry about getting your rendezvous ready to go, and are we making a proper communication newsletter for our team and all that kind of thing. When really you need to be talking infrastructure and preparation. You look at, I don't know, you guys are well versed with New Mexico. I don't know if people who are watching are, but it's a rural state. It's a desert state, a beautiful mountain area. And it seems so country and so rural, you'd never worry about it, but they are within days of losing trapping on public land there. And if it goes the way everyone predicts it will go, and if it gets to a vote real quick in the House, it'll pass, and a good portion of that state will be off limits for trapping. Once that happens, it's very hard to get it back.
Right, and basically 50% of that state is public ground.
I've heard a couple of numbers, and I'm not exactly sure. There's some stuff that's sort of borderline, like some of it is the Mexico Historic Land Trust families and other things that are quasi-public. It's something like half the state. I've heard 60%, I've heard 40%, but they're going to lose half the state to it. And when you take out the corridor of the cities, Albuquerque, that kind of area, you're looking at, maybe a quarter of the state will be available on private land. Also, New Mexico has areas, particularly around, for example, the Navajo Nation, where you have checkerboarded sections. And so you'll be going down a road, and this mile you can trap, that mile you can't, this mile you can, that mile you can't. You're going to have good GPS just to know if you're legal or not, if that passes. So,
right. The and this is clearly one of those deals like Colorado was a number of years ago, where basically probably Albuquerque, Santa Fe, probably right there for the most part are the ones pushing this, or are the ones behind this. The urban perspective are the ones, and I remember we were in New Mexico a couple years ago trapping. We were literally on a ranch road, kind of pretty much in the middle of nowhere, going down the list, making the phone calls to committee members at that time, telling them our perspective and where we, even though we were from out of state, clearly we were there spending money. We just bought $350 licenses. It was
staying at their hotels, buying their food, boosting the economy.
So, but yeah, that was a couple years ago. New Mexico's obviously been kind of a hotbed for a while, but it's definitely coming to a head here. So this is the closest they've ever come.
Yeah, no question. And they're not done if they get that. You know how this works.
Sure.
It's really troubling too, because I think it was in 2012, the National Wild Earth Guardians, which is primarily an Intermountain West association, donated $25,000 to the Albuquerque chapter, and that $25,000 on their tax records was dedicated to end trapping in New Mexico.
Yeah,
and I haven't been able to track it down, but I suspect they've been making that donation every year since, and so they're able to do this. It is so frustrating. This whole case is based on a dog that was caught in a snare set by an illegal trapper. He had a dozen citations of lawbreaker. He was not trapping. The dog was way away from the owner. It was just a absolute anomaly, unusual, unpredictable, but it became Roxy's law. In other words, if you love dogs, you have to stop trapping on public land. And here's why. This poor dog, Roxy, died. These people are absolute masters of how do I put this? They can take a piece of data like that and blow it up into something that it isn't, but it still works for them.
Sure.
A good example of that is the wildlife contest for coyotes that's been going on around the country. Humane Society, it's been maybe 10 or 15 years ago, published, it's like a 50-page, 60-page document, how to end wildlife killing contests in your state. And it's a step-by-step plan about how to do it. You start by finding an incident, and then you assign the 3 people to write letters to the editor in the bigger newspapers. Then you start making donations to senators in your campaign. It's just a plan for how to get rid of trapping in the state. And so every time in this case, wildlife contests. So the Humane Society, whose tax records in 2018 were $128 million of income, that's what they reported, $128 million, spends all their time, 98% of it, out here trying to end what we do. That's really about all they do. They don't run shelters like they say they do. They don't do any of that other stuff. It's all legal litigation and political planning. And every time I run into another thing, then the one that's going on right now is the fur ban. And I haven't seen the document, but I'll bet you anything there's a resource guide been published somewhere by someone to teach people how to get rid of fur garments in your community. You know, it's just how they work. And it's quiet. It's with a lot of money, make a lot of donations to campaign funds, get a lot of allies. The 2 committees that this bill, the current bill, number 32, went through in New Mexico were both 7 in favor and 2 opposed when they first went to committee. We buried them in data. We buried them in science. Both of them were just from all kind, Farm Bureau, livestock, the Trappers Association, everybody in the state, a real broad coalition of hunters, fishers, and trappers, buried them in data. And the bill came out of both committees, the Judiciary and the Natural Resources, I think it was. They both came out of committee 7-2, just like they went in.
Yeah.
So it's almost as if this was a pre-done conclusion, and I believe it probably was.
Sure.
So now we're at the House floor, and we know that the House is leaning toward a blue state, and it's dangerous. It might have come up today, but they said it wouldn't. So it'll come up in the next few days. And frankly, we have a couple of Hail Mary nuclear strategies that are under the works, and I'm not going to say any more about that. But I would say, and I hope people don't think I'm babbling, but the NTA, the New Mexico Trappers Association, Sportsmen's Alliance, the Farm Bureau, Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, all of these people have been, and I don't mean they're just saying yes, I mean they're supportive. The Farm Bureau has been setting up the Zoom calls. Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus has been lining up the agendas for the meetings. These people have jumped in and carried this water for all of us. New Mexico is a small association. They can't deal with somebody that has millions of dollars, but the coalition out there has been unbelievably strong. At the same time, that state in November really fell off the red bus and onto the blue bus.
Yeah.
And you can only do so much when conclusions are predetermined, and it becomes very, very difficult. So that's the big challenge in New Mexico right now.
Yeah. It's so while we're talking about New Mexico, so the Biden administration, the point is proposed person for the Department of Interior is a woman from New Mexico who was an advocate for no trapping on public land, even though she, in quote, says she supports all use of public land. Clearly doesn't.
Or hasn't.
Yeah, exactly. So obviously that's she hasn't been appointed yet. She's still going through the process, I guess. But
you're right. Her name is Deb Haaland, and I kind of get the sense of it that she's a fairly reasonable person, but clearly her values are not my values. And I think she'd make a nice neighbor, and I admire her. I think she has a lot to offer, but I find it troubling when someone who is so clearly an advocate for a particular point of view is appointed to a position as important as Secretary of the Interior.
exactly.
I would think we would want people that were neutral, that were open-minded, that had a history of compromise and full and science and research and disclosure, so they would make wise decisions. And that's not the case here. And when she was pressed by the senator of Montana in the hearing that if she believes in public access to public lands, why did she support the group that was trying to ban trapping on public land in New Mexico? She starred in the video. She was the voice of that group, the Wild Earth Guardians of Albuquerque. And she said, well, I just was doing what my constituencies wanted me to do, which I find an offensive thing for a person to say. Is your morality completely determined by the people that ask you to do something, or maybe, contributed to your campaign?
Right.
But I think she's a decent person. And part of the issue right now is that we're so sensitive to cultural ideas that if you object, you appear to be opposed to someone being a Native American. And I don't care if she's Native American or Martian. If she's a reasonable person, I'll support her. Matter of fact, I think a Native American would bring a wonderful perspective to that Department of the Interior. I just want a Native American who is not historically an advocate for a specific radical group. That's the part that just doesn't make sense to me. And I'm pretty sure that the Biden administration has other nominations along those lines, and it's kind of alarming. We're going to see a pendulum swing pretty far the other way before this is over.
So you had mentioned, so what other states? New Mexico, I think, is the most serious overall, correct?
Right. I guess so. Yeah. That depends on how you look at it, I guess. Oregon is, several of them. Oregon has the Beaver Ban thing that's been going on for quite a while. And that got alarming a while ago because there was a petition to ban beaver trapping on public lands in Oregon, and it went to the commission. The department, the Fish and Wildlife Agency in the state of Oregon was told to shut up. They didn't want them to testify. And that's part of a national push. And I suspect that there's a guide sheet that HSUS or somebody has put out about how to get, what it's about is getting rid of fish and wildlife expertise. Their argument is that fish and wildlife people are only there to provide hunting and fishing and trapping opportunities for a small segment of the public. And that argument is an easy sell to people who don't know the difference.
Sure.
And so if you get rid of those people who are the wildlife biologists who know about managing wildlife, and you replace them with your advocate friends, you can do anything with it. And that's really the big push all over the country. It happened in California. It's working on it really hard in Colorado. I hear it all over. Get rid of the Game Commission. And they call it rebranding. We're going to change ourselves into wildlife, and we care about butterflies, we care about fish, we care about wind, solar, we do all the wonderful things that everybody who is kind of in the green camp wants us to worry about. But it's a denial of science. There is no evidence that banning the trapping of beaver on public lands will have any significant impact on the fishery. They're arguing that it's for salmon and trout. Well, sometimes beaver are wonderful for salmon and trout. Sometimes they're horrible for salmon and trout. Wisconsin has been paying people for years to kill the beaver in order to enhance the trout fishing in Wisconsin. They have DNR people killing beaver all over the state so that the streams don't get interrupted with dams. So it's an advocacy instead of a science-based decision. And that's maybe the most alarming position that's out there, because if you take away each state's right to manage its wildlife with science and biology, and you replace it with advocacy, we're protecting this because it's pretty. For example, Illinois, we're going to protect the bobcat because it's a beautiful animal. I agree, it's a beautiful animal, but the best thing for the bobcat population is to manage it wisely, not to cancel all management entirely. So it's hard to say. New Mexico is eminently bad. Oregon is a little bit bad, but this principle of getting rid of fish and game management and replacing it with advocacy management is maybe the most alarming trend that I've seen. It could be the downfall of all of it. Right. Ironically, the North American model of wildlife management in the last 100 years has produced the most productive wildlife in the world. We have the most successful, the most healthy, the most sustainable wildlife populations in the world. And there are just people who say, we can't have that. We have to do that differently somehow. We got to wreck that. If it works good, we got to dismantle it, I guess. So
here in Indiana, the population of animals that we have now that we didn't have when I was a kid it's amazing, clearly amazing. And in my lifetime in Indiana, we've lost only one season to a species, and it was ruffed grouse. We don't have a ruffed grouse season anymore. The ironic thing, or the interesting thing about that, is the reason we don't have ruffed grouse is because this push to stop clear cutting in national forests. So deep woods doesn't support any type of wildlife to speak of other than maybe a squirrel. So when they quit the clear cutting, and then they had, all the new undergrowth or whatever that was supported rough grouse habitat, when they stopped all that, then we lost our grouse, and we lost our grouse season, and we lost that natural resource. Whether you wanted to be a bird watcher to see a grouse, or whether you wanted to be a hunter of a grouse, we don't have them. So you can't do either one now. So that's kind of a downside to what this other environmental, if you want to call them that, environmental perspective of just completely preserving the forest, which none of it was old growth anyways, versus the management of a species with habitat. But yeah, the Department of Natural Resources across this country have done an excellent job with wildlife. I mean, we've there's another one. So I saw Jane Goodall said that grizzly bears were coming back despite man's negative influence on them, and it was like, well, maybe initially we did, I don't know, but we were the reason that they're coming back. It was like she missed the entire point of all the state biologists and all the efforts put in over the years to why we were having a good growth in grizzly population. So it's like, I don't even know how you compete against that type of platform that someone like that has. It's just
it's mind-boggling. And when you think of something, people who don't know wildlife lose the perspective of how complicated and interrelated it is. Mm-hmm. But my analogy is, it would be like going to the Department of Roads and say, you have to stop using concrete on your bridges on the highway. We want you to use this pink stuff because it'll be far more attractive and everybody will be happier. You would never dream of doing that. You would say, no, you hire a technical engineer to set the aggregate to build the bridge because it's for public good and for public safety. So why wouldn't you do the same thing with the science of wildlife management? It's a complicated kettle of fish. And it's ironic because in some places beaver do benefit trout, some places they don't. But clearly what they're arguing is not about what they claim to be arguing.
Right.
In other words, most of this is a smokescreen to end an activity that's in violation of their value system. So in Colorado, where they banned the cruel steel-jawed leg-hold trap that was so cruel and they got rid of it, now the petition tomorrow in the commission is to ban the cage trap. So wait a minute, what happened to the cruel steel-jaw trap? It was so horrible. Now you're banning the cage trap. It becomes clear that what they're banning is harvesting wildlife.
Right.
It's what they want to get rid of. We're not going to harvest wildlife. We're going to manage it by harvest. We're just going to back off. And the consequences of not managing wildlife are catastrophic for wildlife. Everybody knows that.
Right.
So when not everybody who has any kind of science understanding knows that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
No, you're fine. No. We appreciate that.
So with everything going on, how do you feel with like our relationship with the National Trappers Association, Sportsmen's Alliance, along with the fur takers, everyone working together to kind of overcome some of these things? I know fur takers contribute, money to Sportsmen's Alliance and things like that. So can you kind of just talk about that relationship between everyone?
Sure. I don't pretend to understand all the historical things that occurred at one time. But what I do know is that if we can't collectively put ourselves on the same team, we're doomed. And I'm so pleased that John Daniel, president of the National Trappers Association, and I talked about this very thing several years ago before either one of us was an officer. And so it's so wonderful now. John has been tremendous about helping put aside whatever we have, and we have things, and we will always have things that are different, that work in different ways, or we get in each other's territory, or maybe we do a fundraiser that interferes with their fundraiser. All that's going to happen. But all of those old grief things we've just put them aside. We've just said we're done. And I couldn't be any happier about that And it's even bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that. When we're working with the Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus, we did several things with them this year, and the leadership is working on, and the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation is working to build a memorandum of understanding between our associations and their associations so that we have a clear outline strategy about how we are partners in all this. And when you put Farm Bureau and you put Congressional Sportsmen's Caucus and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation and so many of these other areas, the ag societies, sheep and cattlemen and crop people that have wildlife damage, we are building a coalition of people that is 1,000 times stronger than we are individually. And we can't survive individually. We just can't. I'm sorry. We just don't have a future. So both John and I, when we decided we were just going to work together and not worry about it, we both agreed that probably some of the older members of our associations would be upset because there's some old grudges out there. And I know there are. And so I've been waiting for that to fall on me. And guess what? It hasn't happened. I haven't had one person call me and say, "What in the world are you doing talking to the NTA? They're a bunch of communists and shit." Never talk. That's stupid. Nobody's bothered to call me on that. And John told me the same thing. Nobody in the NTA has said anything about that either. But that's really just the headwaters, the opening of the gate, because that coalition keeps every day broadening to another group, backcountry hunters and anglers, and other groups who are, I don't know how to put this, certainly they're more populous than we are. Ducks Unlimited even got involved in one of our trapping issues. And that's a new thing because Ducks Unlimited has been pretty careful about not getting directly involved with political issues that don't relate to ducks or habitat. We're seeing, and I think it's probably because the wolf's at the door. We're all recognizing that wildlife management as we know it is at risk, and none of us are probably going to be strong enough to struggle with it. Last year, Gates pushed us for one of those little tragic lack of foresight. We called it the 2020 Vision Program, where we were going to use 2020 sight to get our act together. And boy, what a bad name for anything anymore. 2020 is right up there with Adolf Hitler. But anyway, the vision is still there. We're going to have a coalition of outdoor like-minded people, and we're going to be very powerful. And if we're together, I don't believe we're going to be on the offense. We're no longer going to be on defense, because not only do we have the intellect and the power and the time, but organizations like the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation have people who are trained and skilled and paid a full-time salary to do things like go to lobby for other folks, to go into councils and commissions. So we're going to be part of that coalition with those resources, with those intellects, with those people, with that kind of money. I've never been happier. I look at Fur Taker magazines from the 60s, and they were full of anti-trap bans. The anti-trap people have made a living trying to get rid of us for 50 years. And we're going to take away their job, I think. I think we have a chance to turn this thing around.
Yeah. Yeah, I sure hope so. It's kind of like a parasite, though. It's like, I don't know that they fully want to accomplish their agenda, because then we take away their meal ticket.
That's exactly right. But there are other meal tickets, and I just assume they went and picked one.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, they just keep picking away at us, and they move from one thing to another. And they've had some successes for sure. Arizona, you can't trap on public land. Colorado's been pretty bad outcome overall, and it just continues to get worse. There's some other states in there too. So, going back, Dave. So, are there some other issues that you want to mention? We've talked about Oregon. We've talked about New Mexico.
Well, like I said, I think Washington has a bad bill. Maryland, Alaska, Illinois, Colorado, Rhode Island, New York, Hawaii. Who'd have thought we had a bill in Hawaii, but it's to ban the sale of fur garments.
Yeah.
And that's been a big one, is to get after that garment industry. They're trying to take away the incentive for fur harvest. And there's no question about it. That's about all it is. It's funny because I say funny, it's not funny. It's really sad. In Washington, the title of the bill, here it is. The title of the bill is Protecting Public Health by Prohibiting Certain Activities Related to Fur Production. It's all about COVID. They said that the mink had COVID, so we have to ban fur farms and stop the sale of all fur in the state. It's like, what? How did you get from there to here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's, yeah.
In the initial paragraph of the bill, it says, we know that there is no data to prove that the COVID is ever transferred from a mink to a person. It's all been the other way around.
Sure.
But we still think we ought to protect public health by banning all fur farming and all fur sales and fur coats. So it's like, you're not arguing for what you say you're arguing for. Right. Yeah, I think there are a dozen of those, and that's been, that's the soup of the day because some organizations put money into it. Some of them are Connecticut's trying to ban body gripping traps, New York foothold traps. Yeah, anything with a spring on it has been big on there. And then, of course, the Illinois with the bobcat, we mentioned that. Colorado trying to just ban all recreational trapping. In other words, the cage trap, but all harvest period, so you can't have it, you can't sell it, you can't catch it.
So Colorado does have that provision that if you have a ranch and you have some critters that are causing you problems, that you can get a permit from the state.
Currently, yes. Mm-hmm.
To trap for 2 weeks with a foot trap.
As long as they're BMP approved foot traps, because and that's one of the things the BMP did is they were able to say, here's the science that proves that these traps are humane. You can't deny it. Look here, here's the $1 million worth of research in 20 years. So yeah, anyway, sorry.
But that is that provision under attack as well, or is that exempt from all of this?
I can't say right now. The petition in front of the group is not about that, but it includes it specifically identifies the cage trap because people are using cage traps to trap bobcat very successfully and some gray fox and some other animals for fur harvest. And so what the petition argues is that the constitutional trap ban that they voted on 20 years ago, the people who voted for that meant that it should include cage traps. It's like, what? Really? You know what they meant when they voted yes? They were thinking cage traps, So it's politics. What I've seen, particularly in in New Mexico, it sort of makes you want to go take a shower. I mean, there's so much that goes on that isn't about right or isn't a lot of it's a follow the money, and that's a thoughtful thing. I would like to say quickly that both John, Daniel, and I in the NTA are beginning to work on a kit that will help states that have not had battles get ready to have battles. And we have about a dozen guys on this committee from both of our camps who, for example, Stan Steele in Oregon, who's been fighting the antis his whole life and successfully pretty much between Washington State and California, no less. It's like talk about between the fire and the hot place. But we're looking at some simple, let's get started saving our world products, and then we may expand it out to seminars and that sort of thing. But try to get people ready. A lot of people say, how do you hire a lobbyist? What's a lobbyist do? Those are good questions, and we all should know, because nobody thought that New Mexico would get bombed. Nobody thought that would happen there, and it did. And nobody's safe. Nobody.
Yeah. And 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Montana was on the ballot on public land to ban trapping.
Yep.
Fortunately, it was defeated pretty soundly.
Yeah, it was about 2-1. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So it can happen anywhere for sure.
You bet it can. When you think of Montana being as wild and as crazy as it was, but you have in Nebraska, the 5 counties that hook up with Lincoln and Omaha have 85% of our population.
Sure.
And I think that's true in every state. There's an urban hub where 70 or 80% of the population lives, and that 70 or 80% of the population has never eaten something they've killed, whether it be a chicken or a pheasant. They've never seen anything die except their pet dog that got run over by a car. So they're separated from the land so far that it isn't like they're against trapping. They just have no bearing. And so if somebody comes in and says it's bad, oh, well, it must be. They told me it was,
Yeah. So, yeah. And I don't, and the bottom line is I'm not sure they really care enough to go do the homework or care enough to to pursue. It's not hurting or affecting them directly in any way. So it's like it's easy to jump on that bandwagon, way easier to be against it or in favor of outlawing it than it is to do some homework, do some research.
Yeah.
You know, so and
I don't. Two things I just have to. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting, but one is that Responsive Management just published a really exhaustive survey of public opinion, and one of the graphs on that is do you support regulated trapping? And this is Broad Section Society from a whole bunch of different states, and 50% of the respondents on the survey said we do support regulated trapping, and then it had have no opinion, oppose, or strongly oppose. And of the 50 that supported and those who have no opinion, it came to almost 75% of the American public support or don't oppose trapping. So what we have is a squeaky wheel that is very vocal and very effective, convincing the people who aren't paying attention and aren't going to,
right,
that this is a majority belief, and it is not. But we have that internally as well. If 5 or 10% of the trappers will even bother to join a trapping association, 95% of trappers don't support an association that's fighting to protect their career. That number just amazes me. How can you not? And you know, when you ask them, it's like, well, back in '66, Bill said a bad thing at a meeting and I haven't been back. Well, okay, good. Take that right to the grave. Get ready to, you know, price out your traps, have a yard sale, because it's going to go with you. You know,
yeah.
People have to get rid of that. We have to get people fired up somehow to support. And I'm not talking about just send us money. I just want you to care. I just want you to raise your hand and be counted. And, you know, democracy is run by who shows up. And we as a group haven't been showing up very well.
Right.
Sorry, that's it.
No, you're right on the money. I while we're talking about that, we'll segue to social media posts that trappers do or post. And
sometimes we can hurt ourselves if we're not careful.
Howdy. Mm-hmm.
And certainly it's like, okay, distasteful picture of a trapped animal or a dead animal or whatever. But in some eyes of the public, it doesn't matter. Any of it would be distasteful. They don't want to see it, period. You know, it's kind of like, where do you draw the line? And you know, and the perspective should probably be that you need to be sensitive to what other people may see. And then, of course, anyways, what's your thoughts on that, Dave? So,
well, it's one of those much bigger issues than most people give it credit for. And I mean, on both sides. I mean, there are people who are publishing pictures that other people are condemning, and then it becomes, I have a right to publish that picture, and I'm proud of what I accomplished, and I'm not embarrassed about what I accomplished. And how dare you suggest that I'm, you know, it's a broad array of complicated things. But so if somebody posts a picture of an animal in a trap on social media, it's a really difficult thing to determine whether it's going to be perceived as negative or not.
Right.
What I did with the magazine in all the years that I published it, I'd show my cover photo to my wife. And if she said, oh, I didn't run it, because I could tell that there was an inherent emotional response in her that put our world in a bad light. And so it's time to go find another picture. And I don't know, you could go back through all the years that I edited, and I bet there aren't 2 or 3 raccoons on covers. Raccoons are cute.
Yes.
They're very cute. And you just can't get a picture of a raccoon where he doesn't look cute. And so I didn't put him on the cover. You know, if you get close to that raccoon, you're going to see a whole new version of what it means to not be cute, you know, but what the person perceiving it is seeing. And it's funny, if you're on a closed forum, I guess that's one thing. And I don't quite understand how secure a closed forum is, but if you're publishing on something as open as Facebook, anything that might cause someone who is borderline to become opposed to us, you just handed a hand grenade, you took out the pin, and you said, please throw it at me.
Yeah.
That's what you accomplished. You've given them a tool with which to undermine us. And it's hard because I'm proud of the thing. I had a beaver job recently where I've been after this one old male beaver in that lodge for a long time. And I snared him yesterday morning, and I was so happy to have him. I was doing my Snoopy dance, and I took several pictures of him. And for me, that picture is frameable and put on the wall, but it might offend some other people. He's in a snare and he's up on the land. I don't know how to tell people except to say, please don't hurt us. I know you're proud. I'm proud. I'm not ashamed of what we do, but don't give ammunition to the enemies because they definitely use it. Can I just relate one story in Colorado? There were some guys cage trapping bobcats, and when they had the meeting on the first petition to ban the cage trap, these guys posted on Facebook a video. They had a bobcat in a cage trap, and so they got it with a choke pole, and they're talking and laughing, and they're proud because they've just caught a really nice bobcat, and they're so proud. So it's kind of a celebration for them. So they get the catch pole in there, and to me, a catch pole or a snare is an excellent way to dispatch a cat. It's very fast for the felid family, not maybe so much for others, but it's very, very quick for cats, and it's very humane because you see those eyes roll back in a very short order, well within the 200 seconds that the BMP recommends for time to death parameters. But anyway, these guys are laughing and joking, and they choke down this bobcat, and they're choking it, and you're watching it get choked while they're telling jokes. And the commission room was full of about 150 people, and that was gone. Trapping, killing bobcats was gone. And they passed a provision: you cannot dispatch bobcats with anything other than a weapon right now. And the guys that were doing it were just proud of themselves. But what they did is hand the case to the antis, and they lost the tool. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to make that any more clear. You have a right to post whatever you want to post. Nobody's trying to boss you around, and this is not a communist state. But please don't give the ammunition away and let them bomb us with it. That part is so counterproductive. We got enough to worry about with what's going on, let alone us handing them tools.
Right. And I think I can mention this because it was on Facebook, and that's public. The other day, Chris McAllister, the past president of the NTA, actually called somebody out on a photo that they had posted of a snared coyote about this wasn't a very good way to portray, trappers or whatever. And, the feed below that was like, I think one or two people got or appreciated what he had said, and everyone else was like oblivious to, any concern that photo may cause. So, we all have to be aware of, what we're doing and what we're saying and who we're talking to in all these regards. The thing is, most of us were really good at preaching to the choir. And, generally people that are going to listen to this podcast are probably pretty much in agreement with where we're at to a point. I mean, we all got differences of point of view or whatever, but, some people, I'm not sure we can fully ever reach them for sure. And I don't know how you do that. So,
yeah. And I don't either. And the last thing I want to be is some kind of tyrant that says I have the right to decide for you what you post. That's not something I would be comfortable in doing, but there are a few simple things. For example, does the animal look clean? Is there blood? Does the animal look like, is there a big torn up catch circle, which makes it look like a lot of trauma occurred? Those are the kind of things to run through your head. Does this look like the animal suffered? Whether he did or not isn't material. What it looks like is all that matters. And it's hard to sort them out because I have photo albums full of pictures that in the wrong hands would be very dangerous. I'm proud of what I did, but I'm not going to post them on social media because.
Right. Sure. So it's
a slippery slope.
Yeah, and this has been going on for quite some time. This discussion, actually, this is nothing new, and probably enough has been already out there that we can never pull back in. So there's a lot of stuff out there already that have fed the antis for sure with whatever. But who wants to be the guy that the antis use to get like they did in Colorado, So
yeah, you know what? He took down his Facebook post and hasn't posted since.
Is that right?
So
Okay.
the message got, I mean, that was the message. He was there. As a matter of fact, he was at the hearing and he saw that. And you could just about imagine how he felt right then, because that room, you could hear a pin drop, and the vote went very seriously at the end of that situation. So
Mhm.
I just, it's just too bad that it takes that kind of a climax to get the message across. I'm kind of an independent guy. I sort of like to do what I like to do, and I don't like to be told what to do. But common sense is not common, and it isn't about what it is, it's about what it can be used for. And I think we all know social media has done wonderful things. Well, here we are, we're on a podcast, but it's also given a megaphone to all kinds of people that historically were pretty much ignored, and so you have lots of voices out there that were not historically out there. And you also had a lot of editors out there in the past, people who say, wait a minute, this could be a problem. Most of today's publications on social media are not edited by anybody. And so the potential for disaster flourish, so.
Yeah. We're buffering or something, Dave. I'm glad you keep talking, because we're probably still getting it, but I'm not sure.
Well, and it's true that some people will never get it. And it's also true that there's probably enough ammunition out there. One more tortured looking coyote is probably not going to change the game. It's just so frustrating. It's like, would you stop beating your head against the wall because you're beating up the drywall and it's getting all bloody, and I just wish you'd quit.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned, we talked about you brought up the percentage of trappers that belong to associations, and that has always alarmed me. I've known that for years now, and we've preached about it to the choir and tried
Sure.
to do our 2 cents as far as putting more and more information out there about that. Some people had put online, I asked about doing a podcast and what it should be on, and they were wondering, what can someone do? What other than, just join? What are the steps? How can they contribute? When a bill pops up, who do they have to call to get to be heard? Just all those little things.
Sure.
To help that way, and then also eventually becoming a member.
Yeah. And again, there's such a broad array of regions of the country and how to get involved. And so it's different in every place. But some of the fundamental things is by joining an association, and you pick, I don't care which one, if it's Sportsman's Alliance or NTA or FTA or your state association or your neighbor state associations, whatever it is, you get a connection and a conduit to information that you can't get any other way, unless you're following their Facebook page constantly and things like that. But that's the starter level, is your local area. If you have a chapter, if you have a state association, that's the starter place, because that's ground zero right there. We talk about how democracy is run by the people who show up. That's where you go to show up to start with. In social media days, we have access that we never had before, but you can contact us. You can email me. You can get on the website and see what's cooking there. Justin's been doing posts for our association on Facebook and lots of other places. It's out there. I can't put too much stock in, I don't know what to do. What you have to do is something. And if that means join an association, get online, you can get your credit card out and join. You can join with PayPal. You can find out where your state or chapter meetings are and go there and sign up and do it that way. That puts you in contact. A lot of people, and I was this way for many years, I just didn't really care to have another meeting. I don't like meetings. I didn't want to go to meetings. You don't have to go to meetings, but you need to be connected. You also need to be financially supportive. When we think about Humane Society's $128 million of annual income, and that's after their expenses, $128 million. People say, $40 to join your association. Are you crazy? That's 10 raccoons. Well, it is 10 raccoons. But the reason you got those 10 raccoons is because of the association, so whatever way you can help. If you're living hand to mouth, go up to the convention and offer to haul out the trash. I mean, if you're too good to haul out the trash, you're probably too good to be a friend of mine anyway. It doesn't really matter what you're doing, but you got to do something. And the easiest thing is to join the national and your state, those first two things. And I'd like you to take a look at Sportsman's Alliance. They're all pretty easy to join. There's 100 ways to contribute to that way. Financially, when you think about it, I mean, here we are, 40 hours a week of donated time against the people in New Mexico with their $40,000 stipend a year for 10 people, and maybe 150,000 for some of them. The fact that we even exist is a compliment to how passionate and aggressive we are. But we can't do that without that 90%. And if you can't afford to help us with money, help us some other way. Come help us set up the demo area at a convention. There's so many easy ways to do it. I almost want to chew somebody out and say, that's a dumb question. Get off your butt and go find out. Go find out. There are ways. Join something. You get to be a part of it. Email and ask for help. If you got questions, join a forum, get online. If you don't use that, then get on the phone and call me or write a letter. I still get these beautiful handwritten letters a couple times a week. It's really fun to get them. It's just a strange thing in this day and age. And I usually answer them in the same way because it's a beautiful way. But all you got to do is move forward. If you can do it financially, do it. If you can't do it financially, there's other ways to help.
You know, we've also heard the absolute ridiculous excuses for not joining an association. And some of it's just not even, it's just irresponsible in a way. You know, we have our local fur sale, which the Fur Taker chapter sponsors and puts on. And we have two sets of commission charges, obviously a lesser commission charge for members of the association, and if you're not a member, then you got to pay a higher commission. Well, almost always that difference would more than pay for your membership. Mm-hmm. Even on years when fur prices were like this, and people will say, well, I'm not going to the sale because then I have to be a member. It's like, I mean, where's the logic? And it's like $40 to join Fur Takers.
And they think they say, well, what do I get out of it?
Yeah. What's it?
You get a monthly magazine for one about everything going on, but then that's just not good enough. Well, I don't want a magazine. Well, you're actually buying for the future for you to continue doing something you love. Mm-hmm. You know, and I understand that mindset, I think, sometimes.
Right.
Yeah.
When you look at the FTA, we currently have 3 or 4 grant programs underway. Grants to help with trapper ed, grants to help with fur bearer research, grants to help with things like that. So the problem with fur bearers is in the state array, they're about bottom on the scale. Deer hunting generates a lot of money. Duck hunting generates a lot of money. Trappers are just kind of like the ugly stepchild in the whole arrangement. And so there isn't a lot of fur bearer research going on. And so we've developed a grant program to give those people money. And you know what? We earn every stinking nickel of it. We have auctions and we have our adventure auctions and we get people to come to convention and we're trying to invest our money wisely and all. We earn every, it's bake sales kind of crap that we're doing here. But if we had the funds to broaden our approach to these things, we could move some mountains. And so it isn't all about the money, but it can't be not about the money either. We need your support, but we also need the numbers. We need your name on that list. But we got a lot of people, like you say, that are selling for at the first sale and don't join. And even though they save money by doing it, is like they don't want to help out. If you don't show up and become part of the solution, you are the problem.
Yeah.
The reason that they can convince 75% of the population that they're wrong is because they don't pay attention. So it's time to step up and pay attention, because if you can't bring it up at Sunday dinner, if you can't help share it, if you can't wear a shirt that says that on there, they don't know we're here. And,
Yeah. It's funny. Last night I sat in on a meeting, and this is another example of how people put their minds together to come up with something, anything to help. Adrian, that down in New Mexico, Joe Young out of Maine, and Nick Biggs out of West Virginia. There might have been a few other people. They all got involved and started something called Trappers United. Are you familiar with this?
I am not. Nope.
Okay, I was going to run it by you anyway, but they put their heads together and started reaching out to supply houses and dealers and stuff for donations. And what they're doing is, if you can prove to them that you joined any association, state level or national level, it counts as a basically a credit towards or an entry into a massive drawing that they're doing. Where and the support that they've gotten from the donations, Charlie supported a few of his packages that we offer. There's all kinds of awesome stuff in it, so I think it's going to help draw some new buyers, hopefully, or members, and they stay in the game afterwards.
Yeah.
And that puts them in a drawing. They might win something big out of it. If not, they've won a prize to keep their rights.
Sure. Yeah. It's a kind of a sad commentary, but we've tried historically several kind of incentives for membership, and I know the NTA has too. If you sign up 5 people, you get a prize, or if you go to a Trapper Ed class, you get 3 months of the free magazine. You get something for free. You get a gift. We're going to send you a videotape. In my experience, most of the time, the incentives last for the year that they joined, and then when their year's up, they don't stay.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to know what it takes to get a mindset that says, do you have the guts to stand up for something you love or not? And if that's not worth $20 to you, then I'm done talking to you. If I've got to buy you a Christmas present to stand up for what you love, I'm ashamed to know you. And I don't know how to say that any more clear. And I know people, and I've kind of lost a few friends over that because I'm the one now shaking my finger at them and they're going, "Ah, shut up." But really, when Colorado, I was selling ads when Colorado passed their first, that ballot initiative. And I had a client who was buying ads from Colorado, and I called him up and said, "I need to have you put an ad in this magazine." And he said, "Nope." I said, "Oh, did I do something wrong, or what's the matter?" He said, "I'm moving to, I think it was Belize." And I go, "What?" he said, "I'm not living in this damn country anymore. I'm moving." He was actually going to Honduras or someplace like that to go live. He was leaving the stinking country. And I went, "Oh, well, then I guess you don't want an ad."
Yeah.
But I people just put their head in the sand and run away. And that is a loser future proposition. You can't quit being an American because you don't like what the party's doing. You got to stay in the game, and we need you in the game. We need you in the game in any way you can be in the game. And all you have to do that is go to the website and look at it, or give me a call on the phone, or drop me a postcard, or get a hold of you guys, or go to your local meeting. It's easy to do, and you do whatever you can do, and we'll be happy to get it, whatever it is. If you got a good income and it can make some substantial donations, by God, we'll spend every nickel carefully, and it'll make a difference. We don't frill this out. We spend every nickel in a good way, but we need that nickel. And there's other ways to help, and we could use any of them. So please get busy, get engaged, because
this is clearly the David and Goliath.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, here we are, few $1,000 level of budget versus millions of dollars of budget working against us, so.
Yeah. And it becomes a triple David. It's like David's tiny little brother, because 90% of those 150,000 trappers in the country are not supporting the associations.
Right.
So it's like David's mouse against Goliath, and right. We're up there, we're doing it. You ever see that poster of the mouse with the eagle? Yeah, we're doing that. We're there. But it's a strange problem. And I'm afraid half of the problems that are happening with our country is because people have disengaged. And I don't mean just trapping. I mean, there's all kinds of social upheaval that's occurring, not because we're bad or good, but because we just aren't caring enough to be involved. Mm-hmm. I see that, everybody, I'm on the local fire department, and the average age there is like 50, 58 years old. People are not volunteering for things. People don't join their church clubs. People don't, they do get excited about certain things in some ways. If you have a walk for cancer, you get a lot of people show up, and it's wonderful. But a lot of other things are occurring that are also important that don't get that response. And I don't know how to trigger it for sure.
One thing I would say, the walk for cancer is great, certainly neat, but it's a one-time thing. It's a one-time deal.
Yeah.
It's not an ongoing. You're not involved in a.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can be a member of the American Cancer Society, I'm sure, but it's
yep.
For a supporter. But I mean, that is a little bit different. But,
and it's funny because, we focus on the 90 or 95% that don't help, but I've had several members since I started this most recent job, get a hold of me and say, can we set up a way that I can give you $10 a month out of my account automatically to help the cause? Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
And $10 a month that's automatically withdrawn from your bank account is, you're not going to feel it. I swear to God, you won't know it. Well, some people maybe are.
Yeah.
Maybe they're out of work right now. But generally speaking, when that kind of an automatic thing happens, you don't even see it go. But it matters a whole lot. That $120 is a real blessing on this end for what we can accomplish. And if we go into a lawsuit in New Mexico, which is very possible, we're going to be out rattling the can, and we'll be like the guy at Christmas in front of the Walmart, and hopefully you'll drop a quarter in the bucket, because
yeah,
my wife's not going to let me sell my traps in order to fund this thing. That's all there is to it.
Well, Dave, we appreciate you taking the time and sitting with us to chat. We'll definitely have to do this again in the future.
Okay, maybe we can talk about some more fun stuff too. It seems like we're always kind of griping about how things ought to be, and it's the way my grandpa used to be all the time. I guess maybe that's because I'm now a grandpa. I don't know, but so sorry about the doom and gloom.
Do you have any final conclusions before we sign out of this? Something you want to get across or want to say before we leave?
I think the one big thing I want to say right now is, in my whole life, I've never seen the opposition be as financed and as aggressive as they are, but I've never seen our community as fired up as it is. And there are plans in place by people who are good at it to turn this damn thing around. And it's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. And how do you measure that? I'll tell you how. One of the ways I measure that is, we opened up a job position, and we had 9 stellar candidates from all over the country apply for that position. These people are all overqualified for the position we got. They want to be a part of this. They want to be a part of this association, and they want to be a part of fixing things. And I'm pretty pumped about that. All the things I say about we're not getting anywhere, we're losing, we're fighting. I think we've got the potential to turn this baby around, and we got the people in place to do it. And I'm pretty pumped. If we can just get rolling, and get this damn COVID thing out of here so that we can do some collective bargaining. I think we're poised, and I think the world is ready to stand up and do something. I think we've been complacent and taken our beating too long, and it's time's up. Let's go. Let's fix it.
I think I'll say one thing here in conclusion. I think one of the positives of COVID has been this new or renewed interest in outdoor activities.
Absolutely.
Clearly, fishing and hunting were license sales, not just in Indiana, but across the country, have been way up. Mm-hmm. And then the interest in trapping, which being in the supply business, we see this every year, but technically it doesn't really kick in until guys get done deer hunting. So then that's when the trappers come out. And so the interest in trapping has been quite high. So hopefully most of those will stick with it once things get back a little bit more to normal. Certainly, hopefully, a lot of those people will become members of associations. Clearly, they didn't start trapping because fur prices are good right now.
Absolutely.
It's just something that they wanted to recreationally do to enjoy the outdoors. So, like I said, hopefully they'll join an association. Hopefully, most of them will stick with it as trappers and outdoorsmen. So that's kind of my concluder here. We'll end on that little bit of a positive note. So
good.
My concluder is basically beat the dead horse one more time here. Everyone join something.
There you go. Get
engaged, get involved. Let's do it.
Well, we're not something as in Trapping Sportsmen's Alliance related, not the Humane Society of the United States.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah.
I'm glad you made that clear, Charlie. Hopefully that's clear.
We can be misinterpreted, but I hope that wasn't gone. Yeah. No, that's good. That's right. Get up there, get up on your hind legs. That's the way I had an old English teacher tell me that. Get up on your hind legs and do something. That's a good way to put it.
Exactly. Well, Dave, we sure appreciate you coming on, and maybe we'll pester you sometime in the future for another one, but we sure appreciate you coming on. So
sure, I appreciate it. You guys are getting the word out and doing good things with social media and the association too, and I value your your work every day. I really do. So don't tell you that very often, but I do. So,
Well, likewise. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
All right. Bye.